Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a deep plunge into the life of Thomas Bullock. Now, he's a figure in early Latter-day Saint history who, might not be instantly recognizable to everyone, but whose contribution was, well, the sources make it clear, absolutely critical.
That's right. We've got a pretty detailed biographical account to work from here, pulling together insights from various historical documents, his own journals, official records, other people's memories too. It gives us actually a surprisingly rich picture of a man often just known by his job title.
And our mission, really, in this deep dive is to move beyond just the clerk. We want to understand Thomas Bullock, the person, explore those pivotal roles he played, mainly as a record keeper, but really uncover why his work wasn't just important, but genuinely indispensable.
Indispensable for preserving the history, yeah, and also for shaping that early community, especially as they navigated just incredible change and hardship, first in Nauvoo and then heading west.
Exactly. It's about revealing the, surprising weight carried by someone you might just call a mere clerk and finding the dramatic, very human story woven into those meticulous records he created.
So, Thomas Bullock lived 1816 to 1885. He was right there, smack dab in the middle of the action, the Nauvoo period, which was vibrant but also increasingly volatile. Then the harrowing forced exodus and that incredibly tough task of settling the West, building a whole new society.
And his core identity, right through all that, the sources just keep emphasizing it, was clear. Clerk, secretary, scribe, recorder, proofreader. It wasn't just a job for him in the 9-to-5 sense.
No, not at all. Scholarly work highlights he really saw this as fulfilling a divine duty. Specifically, he felt he was the Lord's clerk because there was this directive, a commandment to keep a history and a general record of all things that transpire in Zion.
And that feeling, that sense of sacred duty must have fueled the meticulousness, right?
Absolutely, and that's why his role was so critical. His really diligent efforts are the direct reason we have such a wealth of detailed, firsthand history from that period, especially the really chaotic, precarious moments. Without him, honestly, so much could have just vanished.
It definitely took more than just skill, though, didn't it? To stick with that through everything they faced.
Oh, absolutely. The sources really stress the personal attributes needed: incredible courage, unwavering faith, and exceptional loyalty. He had to be willing to just keep documenting, often under, extreme pressure.
So where did he get those foundational skills? He starts out in England, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leek, Staffordshire, 1816. And he started working really young.
Incredibly young, age 13, back in March 1830, working in a law office.
13.
Yeah, spent 8 formative years there. And that wasn't just, making copies. It was an intensive apprenticeship. That's where he honed those core clerical skills. Precision, understanding legal stuff, attention to, excruciating detail. It forged the professional habits that would define his entire life's work.
Then he moves into government work.
Yeah, right. Joined the excise department in 1838, and the sources say he was quite proud of this, being one of Her Majesty Queen Victoria's officers of excise.
Sounds important. Inspecting taxable goods, I guess.
Yeah, another role needing accuracy, sticking to the rules. His career was moving along. He married Henrietta Rushton in 38, got promoted, transferred to Ireland in 39. But what's really fascinating is how this path, these years in these demanding professional roles, before he even encountered the Latter-day Saint faith, it equipped him with this highly specialized, invaluable skill set, meticulous record-keeping administration.
It's almost like Providence, isn't it? His background was a direct precursor. It enabled everything he did later for the church. It wasn't just luck he had these skills. They were forged over nearly a decade in really detail-oriented jobs.
And those were exactly the skills the church desperately needed at that time.
Absolutely. That training provided the bedrock. Okay, so then comes a big change, his conversion.
Right, a truly transformative event. He and Henrietta were baptized November 20th, 1841, and the sources paint a vivid picture, emphasizing the challenge involved. It was a cold night when ice was on the canal and the keen, frosty air was blowing.
Brr. Gives you a sense of the commitment, and he faced pushback almost right away.
Oh, yeah. Intense pressure almost immediately. He was pelted with stones. Someone threatened to run him over with a carriage. There was even this terrifying attempt to throw him down an old coal pit.
That's horrific. How did he even process that kind of hostility right after joining?
Well, his reflection was that he felt the Lord had delivered him through it. What's significant, and you see this pattern, is that these severe challenges didn't break his faith. The sources indicate they actually strengthened it, solidified his commitment.
Which really is a recurring theme you see in the history of the early saints, isn't it? That external pressure, the stuff meant to suppress the movement, it paradoxically often just forged a more highly committed membership. People like Bullock, whose resolve was, deepened by the opposition.
Exactly. It kind of weeded out the less committed and really solidified the faith of those who stuck it out, and that deepened commitment led him and his family to emigrate.
To America.
Yep, they sailed on the ship Yorkshire, March 1843. Bullock even took on a leadership role on the ship, supervising a group of 83 Mormons, even helped pay the passage for some.
And the voyage itself wasn't smooth sailing.
No, the sources mention the ship reportedly almost capsized. Real peril. They finally arrived in Nauvoo, May 31st, 1843.
And things moved fast for him there.
Incredibly fast. He met Joseph Smith the very day he arrived in Nauvoo.
Wow, the same day. Smith must have seen something special right away.
He clearly did. Recognized those honed professional skills and, probably the character underneath. Within a remarkably short time, just 5 months later, by October 1843, Bullock became Joseph Smith's personal clerk.
That's a huge deal, right? Super confidential, inner circle kind of role. Requires absolute trust.
Totally. And he held that position right up until Smith's death in June 1844. This put him right at the center, documenting crucial events, key discourses. He was one of only 4 people there to document the pivotal King Follett discourse in April 1844.
So his rapid rise wasn't just about being good with a pen.
Not at all. It fundamentally signals immediate recognition of his trustworthiness, discretion, and unwavering loyalty by Joseph Smith himself, especially in such a dynamic, sometimes chaotic environment. Leadership saw that rare mix of talent and character and put it to use immediately for critical documentation.
He was basically indispensable right from the start in Nauvoo for preserving that immediate prophetic legacy, those key discussions.
Precisely. And after Smith's death, Bullock didn't stop. He continued his work under Willard Richards. He got appointed deputy city recorder in December 44, specifically tasked with organizing Nauvoo's own city records, which had apparently been neglected. Shows his organizational skills were needed beyond just personal secretary work.
He also served in the church historian's office with Richards for quite a while, right? From 1842 to 1854.
Yeah, though it's important to make the distinction the sources point out. He worked in the office and did the work of an assistant, but wasn't technically the first person with the official title assistant church historian.
Gotcha. A key historical detail. And his roles kept expanding in Nauvoo.
Oh, yeah. Clerk, for general conferences, held a really significant clerk position for the Council of 50, that important strategic planning and sort of proto-governmental body from 1846 all the way up to 1882. Documenting their proceedings was vital.
But maybe the single biggest, most massive undertaking for him as a record keeper was the history of Joseph Smith.
This was truly colossal. He started writing the manuscript in February 1845. Now, before he took over, others had compiled about 394 pages of this history.
Okay, and Bullock's contribution, how much did he add?
Get this. In just 1 year, between February 1845 and February 1846, he produced an incredible 674 pages.
Wow. Almost double the previous total in just a year. That's staggering output.
It really is. Shows incredible dedication. He even carefully packed up that precious manuscript for the trek west in February 46, had to suspend work during the journey, naturally, and then later finish it off with George A. Smith in August 1856.
And the sources highlight something really crucial about how he worked on this history. He wasn't just, copying other documents.
No, not at all. This is key. He extensively drew upon his own journals and his own memory to write significant chunks of it. He was actually responsible for writing the final or rough draft for every year from 1839 right through to 1844.
So that volume of personal input, it strongly suggests he was way more than just a transcriber.
Exactly. He was acting as a primary author and compiler for substantial sections of this foundational history text.
That reveals a really interesting dynamic, doesn't it? His official title, clerk, might really understate his actual contribution. He wasn't just documenting history someone else dictated. He was actively shaping and synthesizing a key part of the core narrative, using his own firsthand experience. Indispensable in creating that record.
Absolutely right. Which brings us to the really dramatic events of the Great Exodus from Nauvoo. By September 1846, most saints had been forced out, but Brigham Young specifically asked Bullock to stay behind.
Why? To do what?
To record the city's final sorrowful days. He documented the attack on September 18th, describing Nauvoo being cannonaded by about 1,500 to 2,000 demoniacs.
Just imagining that is harrowing. And it got even more personal for him, didn't it?
It really did. While he was trying to retreat, Bullock, who was apparently sick at the time, found himself face-to-face with about 30 mobocrats. Picture this. They've got a sword at his throat, bayonets pressed against his chest, threatening to shoot him if he doesn't renounce his faith and leave immediately.
My goodness, what did he do?
His response, according to the accounts, was just pure, unvarnished defiance. Came right from his core conviction. He basically said, "Shoot away, for you will only send me to heaven a few hours quicker."
Wow.
Flatly refused to renounce Mormonism. Declared, "I am a Mormon, and if I live, I shall follow the 12."
That takes incredible guts. Just incredible. That moment perfectly shows that incredible courage, unwavering faith, and exceptional loyalty we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It wasn't just theoretical. It was tested right there.
Yeah.
To the most extreme pressure imaginable.
Unquestionably. So after that confrontation, he was forced to cross the Mississippi River with his impoverished family. They arrived at winter quarters later that fall, November 46, and he immediately went back to assisting Willard Richards.
His experiences just during that Exodus period alone, they really highlight the profound sacrifices people made.
Yeah.
Staying behind in danger, facing down that mob, and then the very next year, 1847.
Yeah, Brigham Young specifically called Bullock again. This time to be the chief clerk for the Vanguard Company, the very first group setting out for the Rocky Mountains in April 1847.
The lead group.
Yep. He left just 2 days later, April 13th, with those first 143 pioneers. And this meant making an immense personal sacrifice, leaving his sick wife and children behind in winter quarters.
Oh man, that must have been incredibly difficult. Do the sources say much about that decision or how he felt?
His journals focus a lot on the logistics and daily events of the trek, which was his job. But the act itself, leaving his family, speaks volumes about the priority placed on that initial journey and his commitment to his duty. And that journal he kept wasn't just personal notes.
It was the official record.
It was the official record of the Vanguard Company. It's considered one of the most important documents in church history. It is the foundational account of that first transformative journey west.
So, indispensable again, by providing the official first-hand narrative of that critical initial trek, ensuring it was documented for all time.
Precisely. He also served as clerk for the return trip later that year, finally getting back to his family in winter quarters in late October 1847, after being gone more than 6 months. Then, in 1848, when it was time for his own family to make the trek to the Salt Lake Valley,
Brigham Young tapped him again.
You guessed it, assigned him to keep the official journal for that journey, too.
And he was given this really significant, almost symbolic responsibility regarding the church's records during that trek, right?
Yes, a huge responsibility. He was entrusted with caring for the core church records during the journey, including that massive manuscript of the history of Joseph Smith he'd worked on so much. These vital documents filled an entire wagon.
The famous big wagon.
That's the one, the big wagon. That image alone just underscores how incredibly valuable they considered preserving those historical documents, those administrative records, even when they were in the middle of this desperate, incredibly challenging migration.
It wasn't just about moving people then. It was a deliberate, strategic effort to preserve the foundational narrative and the administrative backbone of the whole community as it relocated.
Absolutely shows an institutional commitment to history, to identity, and to organization right from the very beginning of the Western settlement. Bullock was completely central to that strategic preservation effort. His role was foundational to the church's self-understanding and its ability to function effectively out west. He was indispensable for ensuring the physical survival of the institutional memory and records.
So once they actually arrived in the Salt Lake Valley, his work certainly didn't stop.
Not by a long shot. He continued serving as Brigham Young's clerk for over a decade, recording major events like the reorganization of the First Presidency.
And his roles just ballooned, really showing how essential skilled administrators were to actually building this new society from the ground up.
Dramatically.
Right.
He wasn't just a church clerk anymore. He held tons of positions, both civil and ecclesiastical. Let's see. Salt Lake County Recorder, still clerk for the Council of 50, clerk for the Perpetual Emigrating Fund, which was huge, coordinating immigration logistics from all over the world. Clerked for the Utah Territorial Legislature, he even did proofreading for the Deseret News, and served as a military secretary, holding the rank of lieutenant colonel.
Wow. He even did really detailed statistical work, right? Like the territory census in 51.
Yep. completed the whole thing in just 3 months in 1851, and created these hand-drawn forms for things like the Utah County mortality schedule stuff that would have been absolutely crucial for understanding public health and just basic demographics in a brand new settlement.
And his contributions weren't just administrative, they extended to intellectual infrastructure too.
Right. Helped set up the first library, catalog the books. He was even voted a regent of the University of Deseret in 1863. That was the highest academic honor they gave out back then.
Plus handling practical things like money-making, issuing land inheritances. When you just list out the sheer volume and variety of these roles, it paints a really clear picture. Settling Zion wasn't just, a spiritual dream. It was a highly organized, deeply bureaucratic undertaking that required immense administrative skill.
Absolutely. His work, the records, the census data, the meeting minutes, all the administrative tasks provided the fundamental administrative and civil infrastructure that you need for a functioning, organized society, especially in a challenging frontier setting. This really highlights something critical and often overlooked about successful frontier settlements. You needed that immediate, systematic establishment of robust civil administration. Diligent record keeping was key to the resilience and the sort of unique stability of the early Utah community. He was indispensable for building that practical foundation.
And his career is like a perfect illustration of the deeply intertwined nature of church and civil authority in early Utah, isn't it?
Couldn't be clearer. The lines we might draw today between religious leadership and secular governance were just heavily blurred back then. Church leadership often was the de facto civil government. Bullock operated seamlessly across both spheres because, well, in practice, they were deeply integrated.
So his records then become incredibly valuable for understanding the practical, day-to-day implementation of life and governance under that unique model. Sometimes people call it a theocracy or maybe theodemocracy.
Right, a system where religious leaders also held significant civil power and influence. Bullock's work shows us how that system actually functioned on the ground, day in and day out.
Exactly. His life is almost a case study for understanding how that integrated system worked. Now, later in life, he also served a mission.
He did, back to England, from 1856 to 1858.
And after about 1862, it seems like his assignments in Salt Lake City itself started to decrease. He moved further north.
Yeah, he moved first to Wanship and then settled in Colville around 1868. And there, he took on increasingly local government roles, things like county clerk and recorder, still serving, just on a more local level.
He passed away in Colville in February 1885, after a really long life of service and family-wise.
He practiced plural marriage, marrying Lucy Clayton in 1846 and then Betsy Prudence Howard in 1852. He was the father of 23 children in total, though sadly only 13 survived to adulthood. A very full life, deeply woven into the community and its history.
But his most enduring legacy, and maybe the most revealing, has to be those journals he kept meticulously throughout his life.
Absolutely. They're described in the sources as vital and illuminating original documents, truly one of the most important documents in church history. Well, Bagley's publication, The Pioneer Camp of the Saints, really helped bring them to a wider audience, and they just offer a tremendous amount of insight into the period.
And they have this completely fascinating dual nature, don't they? On one hand, they are the official record of the Exodus, carefully documenting important council minutes he recorded himself.
Yes, absolutely, the official record. But, and this is what makes them so special, they are also described as an intensely personal document.
Oh, okay.
And this is where they become truly unique. He candidly shares his own doubts, complaints, and petty criticism. Some reviewers have definitely noted the subjective side, occasionally calling him a bit of a whiner or saying he mars his record with small-minded complaints.
Right. But that subjectivity, that willingness to include the grumbling, the frustrations, the irritations, that's precisely what makes his account so unique and honestly so wonderful.
Exactly.
It gives us a really valuable counterpoint to the purely official, maybe sometimes sanitized, narratives. You get a far more human, relatable, multi-layered view of these historical events.
Couldn't agree more. While some might initially see those complaints as, a flaw for historians, they provide invaluable qualitative data. They offer genuine insights into the daily stresses, the internal conflicts simmering within the group, the different personalities clashing, and just the raw emotional realities of undertaking such an incredibly difficult journey. His so-called whining, far from marring the record, actually becomes a source of powerful authenticity. It humanizes the past in a way few other records do.
It really does. It challenges that old-fashioned idea that historical records have to be purely objective lists of facts. His personal commentary reveals the emotional, social, and psychological landscapes of the past. It's not just documenting what happened, but crucially, it gives us a window into how it felt to actually live through it.
And that perspective is, well, indispensable for a truly full understanding.
So wrapping up Thomas Bullock's impact then. His life was clearly one of incredible dedication, profound sacrifice, and just tireless diligence. Those professional skills he honed back in England, his enduring faith that was tested and strengthened by persecution, and his absolute commitment to meticulous record-keeping, all that provided the unparalleled documentary foundation for understanding these key, often incredibly turbulent periods of early church history.
Yeah, his journals, his massive work on the history of Joseph Smith, they're just invaluable primary sources. They offer both the necessary official accounts of events and, uniquely, those candid human insights into the immense challenges and the quiet triumphs of that whole era.
His tireless work literally ensured that foundational events, critical administrative details, and the very real, very human experiences of pioneers facing seemingly impossible odds were preserved for us, for future generations. He is, without doubt, an absolutely indispensable figure. His legacy is etched right into the records that shape our understanding of a pivotal and defining era.
And Thomas Bullock's records leave us with a really provocative thought, don't they? They show us that even the most seemingly dry administrative tasks, keeping minutes, recording data, can be deeply connected to profound faith and incredible courage.
That's a great point.
And sometimes, maybe often, the most revealing historical insights, the ones that truly humanize the past and make it connect with us today, they come from the most unexpected corners, like the candid complaints jotted down in the margins of a seemingly official journal.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other official histories, what other formal records might we understand better, more fully, more humanly, if we actively sought out and valued the messy, complicated, personal perspectives that are often hidden within them?